Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Most Important Conversations Daily Meditation. We facilitate these meditations Monday through Friday, and the general theme of the meditations is liberation. Before each meditation, there's a short talk. The talk varies in terms of topics, but the themes of the topics are derived from our program Whole Life Architecture, which is our main transformational ontological program where human beings are participating in a live environment and working and creating together and sharing together on a journey to recreate their life by design as opposed to merely tolerating their life by default, which we're now moving into our 8th year doing whole life architecture. So if you want more information, you can go to tmicglobal.com. One of the things we talk about a lot, and something I'd like to address this morning, is the importance of context. As we wrap up another year and start to look forward to the new year, who will you be in the new year? And what will you embrace by way of change in the new year? And in particular, are you even aware about the context in which your life, in most cases your life by default, is being perpetuated? Today we are living in a lost or unaligned society because we are a lost and unaligned culture. I believe we're on the verge of a mental health crisis, the likes of which we are unprepared for. We do not have the requisite institutions and number of health experts, psychologists, counselors, psychotherapists, or even coaches to capture the wave of cognitive, emotional, physiological, and spiritual discontent that is about to wash over society as a result of all of the uncertainty that we're dealing with, all of the change. And further, as a culture, we're recreating that discontent daily for our youth. The mental health crisis I'm talking about is one where a human doing loses their identity for what they do and has never considered who they are as a being. And this isn't your fault, and this isn't my fault. This is our conditioning. It's the context in which we have been raised and taught that this is what defines life. This is what has purpose in life. This is what gives life meaning. The context around what we have been taught around calling and purpose and meaning is our conditioning. For 80 years, culturally, we have been conditioned to be human doings instead of human beings. A human doing is someone whose belief in themselves, whose value to society, and whose identity is defined by what they do, not what they are, or who they are, I should say, as a being. And in our current noisy context of unprecedented change, whether that is resulting from artificial intelligence, robotics, that are causing the displacement of so many people's jobs and will continue to and accelerate over the next 3 to 4 years. Whether it's the collapse of globalization as a reliable system of trade, whether it's the stresses on our ecosystem upon which we depend to survive and are caught between denial and political expediency on both sides, this unknown we face, this grasping for a certainty in the past which offers us few relevant solutions for a future rushing towards us like a tsunami. I feel I'm speaking from a place this morning outside of space and time, channeling, as it were, the heart of God for a broken people who don't see or realize their brokenness, despite so many adhering to religious rituals and customs, And despite religion being celebrated and consumed through popular culture, our work here at TMIC is to awaken humanity to their soul so that people can reconnect to themselves, to each other, and to nature, including their own inner nature. This is the shifting of the context that we stand for, and it must shift because awakening only begins with understanding the power of context. Understanding what is, how it defines everything in our life as individuals and as a collective society. This is the context. Buckminster Fuller said that environment is more powerful than willpower. Context in your life and in our lives together as a society is that environment. That environment or that context is more powerful than willpower, which, incidentally, is why we've been hosting whole life architecture sessions for the last 8 years. Because the idea of being able to transform yourself, let alone even help yourself, is a misnomer. Self-help is a lie. Human beings weren't meant to help ourselves. We weren't meant to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. Can we do it? Sure. Can some thrive? Yes. Will most thrive? No. Most will struggle, and most do struggle. The context in which we exist as a society is a broken context. So what is this context? At an individual level, our context is defined by our perception. In fact, as we teach in whole life architecture, perception is our reality. It's the water we are individually swimming in. Perception defines and constitutes our experience of our reality. Our perception constitutes our beliefs about what's real, about what's possible, and subsequently, it impacts our choices and our actions, which in turn reify our perception, and the cycle continues. So perception defines reality. We then experience that reality, which recursively affects our perception, and the cycle continues. And this cycle becomes so habituated that it drifts into the recesses of our subconscious, below the level of our awareness. And ultimately, this is what is meant by one's conditioning. In fact, there was a study done in 2022 that found that our perceived experience of reality may be delayed by up to 17 seconds before we have awareness of it. This gets into the physics of time and how our perception is affected by time. For example, the reason it's so difficult to kill a fly without it buzzing off just in the nick of time before your hand or a rolled up magazine connects with it is because flies have a different perception of time than we do. To a fly, your hand looks like it's moving at a snail's pace, perhaps 1/1,000,000th of the speed. And so to a fly, your hand looks like it's coming at it so slowly, it's very easy for it to buzz off. Similarly, our perception of time, it's been noted, may have a 17-second delay before we become aware. So time is not perceptually experienced the same by all beings. And it turns out perception has a lot to say with how we perceive and experience reality. The implications of this, the implications of perception on everything in our life, how we experience that life, how we live it, ourselves, as a being or as a doing, whatever one's individual case may be, but everything we individually experience is filtered through our perception. That is to say, we all have a perceptual filter in our brains. And that is the result of and is constituted over time by our conditioning. That perceptual filter is defined by our conditioning. How we perceive our life is based on our conditioning. It's our programming. We are not perceiving life as it actually is, as though there's some objective reality or truth we have access to. We perceive our life based on our conditioning, our programming. This is why at TMIC, you'll notice we don't call our programming, we call it reprogramming. Because effectively, we have all already been programmed. And it's about reprogramming or even unprogramming ourselves, deconditioning ourselves that is required in order to attain a state of liberation. This is what liberation means. Liberation is being freed from your conditioning so that you can be a creator of your life by design, as opposed to tolerating one by default. Why would you tolerate one by default? Because the one you are tolerating is the life of your conditioning. It's the life other people, your friends, family, community, when you were very young, through your conditioning, trained you to perceive the world in certain ways, trained you to interpret the world in certain ways, and trained you to take or not take actions based on that perception. That perception was learned. You learned how to perceive the world. You learned what it meant. You learned what was, quote, good and not good. All of these things were learned. And they've influenced the way you not only perceive the world, but then the actions you take and the way you generally experience the world and yourself in it. And you didn't become who you are with this conditioning in mere days, months, or even years. We're constituted as a result, and the nature and qualities of that result are determined by our conditioning, which in the most case, for most of us, is the culmination of decades of recursion. Now, awareness, as we expand into it, is the ability to recursively reflect on our conditioning with intentionality, and to unwind or to liberate ourselves from our learned conditioning, and then to recreate ourselves and our lives by design. The only question is whether you will create as an act of the will, whether you are connected and aligned with who you are when you were born in order to create from a pure place, or whether you will create more conditioned artifacts from your learned programming. And this is why history repeats itself. And again, this is the work we do in whole life architecture to prevent history from repeating itself in your individual life and then collectively as a society. This conditioning and our perceptual experience is the context or the environment in which each of us swim. And this context is determinative of how we understand, define, and act on our experience of reality. In fact, we make life or death decisions or choices from our context and everything in between. And we are largely blind to it, unaware of it. That is to say, your context is the blind spot that is thinking you. And despite all of its encompassing and immersive impact on our total experience of life, few of us are present to how important our perception and thus the context is. And we spend so little time to no little time and effort doing the work to understand it, to understand the very context in which we live as individuals and the wider context of the world. And that we are constituent participants of recursively recreating that world, let alone becoming creative masters of our own context by design. Instead, most of us merely tolerate the context of our life. And this context of society is constituted by millions of individual perceptions and other life contexts. There are general themes that we can point to at a societal level that define the context of a particular moment, which are in aggregate created, usually by unconscious default, by those individuals constituting society, by you and me. And at the moment, one of those themes that is defining societal context is the context of change. So as we move into our meditation this morning, I want to invite us in the back of our mind to consider the context of change we are living in. As we wrap up this year and you look towards a new year, what is the context of change that you have? What is your relationship to change? What is your belief systems around change, changing yourself, changing your life, just change generally in society? Are you resistant to it? Are you afraid of it? We ask every whole life architecture participant the following: would you like to be the master of your perception so that you can create a context for your life out of your own design? Or are you merely going to tolerate one by default? If you are going to master your perception and create a context of your own design in your life, that will require change. It's not enough to think nice thoughts. It's not enough to wish or hope. It's not enough to pretend that the secret was a real thing and you can just manifest something by sitting on your couch. Manifestation isn't actually a mystery at all. It's just physics when you understand energetics. And that would begin by you changing the context. But that would require change. What is your relationship to change? Because whatever it is the thing that's in the middle and in front of and probably blocking your ability to shift the context in your life. And I might remind you, you won't be able to do this alone, because context, environment, is more powerful than willpower. But it begins with looking at and observing your relationship to change. Because if you can't find a way to at least step forward in the uncertainty and the unknown of change and take a risk, try something new. If you can't join a program like Whole Life Architecture or another that is an ongoing, devoted program that never ends, that is your weekly connection point to creating your life by design and to connecting deeply and profoundly to yourself. If you can't even embrace that change of doing something new than you did yesterday and the day before, the context of your life will remain the same. So New Year's resolutions are of no meaning or merit. You can resolve all you want, but you are trapped in a context that will define your life until you have the courage to change it. And that may require changing many things in your life once you shift the context. Relationships, careers, health and wellness journeys. Over the 8 years and over the 20 years that I've been doing leadership development work, I have seen it all. Those who are brave enough to change the context and then the dominoes of their life change direction, meaning some things are let go of and new things come into view, and those who stay trapped in the context because they're afraid of change. Which are you as you go into a new year? Are you finally willing to make a change? Are you finally willing to recognize you can't do it on your own? As we move into our Watcher Observer meditation this morning, I'd invite you to consider these things, not as an active thought, but as something subtle in the back of your mind. Allow your higher self to open to the possibility that in 2026 you might embrace change fully for the first time in your life and see how your life blossoms and opens as a result of it, and how the context of your life is transformed. You are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions, you are the watcher and observer of your emotions as we move into our meditation. In this meditation, it is not guided. Please be seated in a comfortable position. Take a few deep cleansing breaths. And you are allowing your thoughts to drift in and out of your awareness without attachment, without chasing them, without ruminating on them. You're allowing your thoughts to just drift in and out of your awareness. You're allowing your emotions to rise and fall like waves in the ocean. Sometimes we think a thought and it's connected to an emotion. And the tendency is to want to drill in and chase that thought or get attached to that emotion. And they say that most emotions that we experience have about a 90-second lifespan, but it's the story we tell about the emotions that keeps us reliving them. So don't tell a story this morning. Let the emotions rise and fall and dissipate. Let the thoughts move in and out of your awareness like clouds in the sky. You are observing them. You are watching them. You are learning to develop the skill set to be in the world but not of it, by being able to be an observer and watcher of the world, participating in it without getting enrolled and trapped in it, without it becoming reinforced conditioning that determines who you are in the world. You want to be the master and author of your conditioning, not the society, not the world, not your friends, not your family, not your community. You. But to get there, we have to activate the creator within. And to do that, learning to be a watcher and observer is critical. And that's what this is good for. So for the next few minutes, you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions. You are allowing them to drift in and out of your awareness. And see if your higher self has anything to say about what might be in the way of you embracing change and stepping into your power in 2026. I'll see you all in a few moments. And welcome back, everybody. Reconnecting to the world without from the world within. Reconnecting to the world of your conditioning. But maybe this morning you had an insight. Maybe this morning during the Watcher Observer meditation, your higher self spoke to you. You saw areas where you're gripping and holding onto and are attached to your conditioning, where you're resistant to change. Can you let that go? And if you can't let it go on your own, are you willing to join others who are journeying on the same journey so that you can finally create a life by design as opposed to tolerating one by default? If you did get an insight this morning and had some new awareness, my invitation to you isn't to start changing things immediately today. Don't be in reaction. Simply observe it, watch it, contemplate it today, have it be in the back of your mind, and maybe explore the possibility of whole life architecture for yourself in 2026. You can find out more about whole life architecture and our other programs at tmicglobal.com. And I invite you to go out into the day aware of how much the context of your life, your conditioning, runs it. And just have that awareness and be curious about it, even playful with it. Wow, my entire life I thought I was thinking my own thoughts. I thought I was making my own decisions. But I'm in reaction to a conditioning, to a context that is thinking me. Consider that this morning, and we will continue our meditations tomorrow.